All right, we are live.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Republic Sunday morning hangout. I am Makisha, and today we're going to talk about influences in our lives regarding, as far as our atheism goes, the people who have influenced our atheism. For those of us who maybe were once religious, what brought you away from that? Was there any particular person, any particular style? We'll also get into a little bit what we have found is effective in communicating our thoughts and beliefs and opinions about certain issues, what methods and approaches have worked for us in terms of talking to theists. And we have some people here today who have written books and write for Atheist Republic, and we'll give them a chance to do a little bit of self-promotion. We don't want to inundate you with too much self-promotion for Atheist Republic. We have a lot of great writers, and we hope that you're poking around our blogs and news stories and the books and all the things that we have to offer. So we'll do a little bit of that, but mostly we want to bring to the fore maybe some people that others haven't heard about, maybe some up-and-coming atheists. We have a lot of young atheists who are now getting a little bit older and able to do some publishing, and we have a whole generation of YouTube personalities. So we'll try to keep track of everything that people are sharing, and afterwards, if everybody here can send any relevant links our way, we will compile them all and put them in the comments down below. We'll put them on the website. We have a resources section on the website at atheistrepublic.com. Make sure you check that out. We'll add these there as well, and I'm sure we'll be collecting a lot of good material that will be helpful, hopefully, to all of you. And I'd like to really feature, not especially, but I would hopefully like to collect some women, some people of color, some people outside of North America and Europe would be great. So if you have even people who don't speak English, people who put their message out there in other languages, that's also fabulous, because we have a lot of people in our community who do not speak English as a first language. So keep that in mind as well. Especially if you have, I would really like to hear some people that maybe others don't know about in America who are people of color, given that atheism amongst African Americans is a bit of an anathema and it's a bit more tricky for them. So if we could get some of those, that would be fabulous as well. I'll go ahead and let you know who's here today. We have Armin and Casper, Courtney, Erasmo, Michael's the one without a face, Todd, and again, I'm Makisha, and let's get started. So I'm going to start out just by asking if anybody has a story about maybe a person, not necessarily a personality, but a person who influenced your atheism journey, whether it was maybe to take it to the next level, if you were always an atheist, or really was maybe kind of a linchpin in pulling you out of religion. As most of us know, it's a process. It's usually death by 1,000 cuts, but there is often maybe one message or one person who influenced you in particular. So if you have a story like that, raise your hand, maybe. Awesome. Okay, Courtney, and then if I have one too, if I need to kind of get the ball rolling as well. So Courtney, go ahead.
You're muted.
She's not muted, but I can't hear her. Try again, Courtney. No, we're not getting any sound from Courtney. So I think I saw another hand as Courtney was talking. Oh, no. Michael was saying he had something. Okay, Michael, go ahead.
Right. We were just sort of noodling this over before we came on air. I think that there's two things that sort of brought me into being more vocal about atheism. I mean, I would say I've been an atheist for as long as I can remember. The thing that really made me more vocal was seeing people like Ray Comfort and seeing them trying to hijack education. I think that really made my blood boil, was this idea that, oh my God, they're trying to steal science from our kids. They're actually trying to deny science and make kids not aware of science in the name of the religion because it upsets them, because it challenges the worldview, and they're getting away with it. And that really motivated me to kind of like take notice. And then influential people like say Matt Dillahunty, people like Richard Dawkins, who were actually sort of looking people in the eye and saying, we don't believe you, this is why we believe you. And that kind of overrode my very British politeness of not going there in the conversation, and it being a no-go area to avoid conflict, because you have to be polite and you don't mention religion and politics at the dinner table. And I kind of like sort of thinking, well, why don't we? Why don't we actually look at people who say, I believe this wrong-headed thing and it is sacred because I say my God believes it. And that, to me, it's people like that, and then sort of becoming more aware of all the stuff on YouTube and seeing exciting young people like, say, Jacqueline Glenn and people like that, just made me aware that there's a hell of a lot of people out there with a lot to say on this subject. And that's basically what sort of started the ball rolling for me and got me into being more part of a community, if you see what I mean. So, I mean, that probably sets the ball rolling for everybody, so I'll see what everybody else has got to say.
Great, thanks, Michael. So Michael, just one question for you. Was there one particular? You mentioned that just hearing people being outspoken. What was it about their approach or their methodology that you found convincing or inspiring, or maybe their tone, or you know how was it that they were approaching the topics that was helpful for you?
I think it was just the honesty of not shying away from actually coming right out and saying it. It was it was looking at Sunday. I think it was Dawkins on one of the Sunday morning "We Are All Going to Sit Around and Talk Nonsense About What We Believe" programs, and somebody asked him a question, and they were asking him a question expecting him to back down from answering it. And I think I would have just sort of like mumbled something like, well, everybody's got a right to their own beliefs, and just sort of not gone there. And he just sort of answered it. And it was like, oh my God, he's actually just answered the question. He just looked her in the eye and answered the question. And she was visibly stunned that he'd actually answered. I don't think she expected an answer. I think it was a I'm going to shut you down with this question. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, you can do that. And the world didn't set on fire, and he got a round of applause from the audience, because there was all these people sat there having exactly the same thoughts as me in the studio audience. Obviously, there were people gasping and like, oh my God, he actually said it as well. And I just thought, geez, I could do that. And what's stopping me? And it was that really kind of like was a light going on moment for me. Not so much like, oh my God, I worship Richard Dawkins, he is so clever, he's such an amazing person. It was just. And then I started stumbling across more and more people who were actually weren't being even belligerent. They were just going, okay, you asked me the question, you're going to damn well get an answer. And I'm just going to answer it really calmly and politely and respectfully, but I'm going to answer you. And you shouldn't have asked the question if you didn't want an honest answer, seemed to be the attitude. And I think it's that as much as anything that's getting religious people angry, because there isn't this sort of you can ask me a question that will shut me down thing going on anymore. People are going, I've got a right to answer that question, I'm going to. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think responding to when we ask a religious person what they think about something, we fully expect to get their, hopefully anyway, and we're used to getting their sincere convictions about that particular issue, regardless of what they're saying, might be subsequently saying about people who don't believe what they believe. And yet with atheism, it seems to be that that's not quite as expected. And in many cases not acceptable to get what you referred to as an honest or a straight answer from an atheist, which is an interesting kind of societal mores double standard in terms of what we expect from a religious person versus what we would expect from an atheist. How have you experienced since maybe you changed your approach to being a little bit more assertive. Have you had a positive reaction to that generally in conversation?
Not always, for obvious reasons. I think you learn very quickly that that if there are ways and ways to come out with something. I mean, if somebody says something to me like, "I believe God made the Earth in 6 days, 6,000 years ago," and that is my belief, and you are wrong if you say that such and such, you know, that the scientific version of things is correct, and so on. And I think if you just say, well, that's bloody stupid, and call them an idiot, then then you're not going to get a good response. Whereas if again, I think it's that sort of learning to ask the person questions. Go, well, why do you think that's sensible? Rather than I think that was my big lesson. At first, I did have that sort of, really? You're that stupid kind of response. And I think I've learned over time to not have that response simply because you just immediately close the person down and make them into an enemy. I think that was a hard lesson for me, and I had a lot of fallings out with people because I just sort of got this very incredulous, but you're a dumbass then. And expected people to accept that from me, even though that was possibly what they would quite often do that to me, that you are just stupid because you do not believe in God, and expect me to suck that up. I think tit for tatting on that's really, really silly. I think pointing out like, well, that's really unkind of you to say that I'm going to burn forever if I don't believe you. You know, having that sort of conversation with somebody, that's kind of, and I think that was, but at the same time having the assertiveness to go, hey, cut it out. You're telling me that you think I deserve to burn forever because I'm going with the scientific evidence, and having the guts to stand your ground. I think you pick that up from, again, watching people like, say, like on, say, the Atheist Experience, Matt Dillahunty sort of dealing with very, sometimes quite nasty telephone calls from people and actually standing his ground. And when to hang up, when to stop talking, when to just realise that the conversation is over because you're not having a conversation. That, again, is something that I think you can learn from watching other people doing it.
And I think, like you said, that the world doesn't end. I think having those models is really great. Thanks, Michael. So we're going to try Courtney again real quick. We'll see if her microphone issue is fixed, and then we'll move on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. All right. So I'm kind of glad Michael did go first because I was kind of the polar opposite when it came to who kind of got me out of it. It was actually the movie Religulous by Bill Maher. And for those who don't know, Bill Maher is a stand-up comedian, but he's not politically correct at all. He's kind of in your face about things. So the documentary Religulous was kind of like a comedic take on religion, and he would travel around to different places and speak to different people, but the way he said things, it was kind of rude, but it made me like take a look and say, whoa, really? Like I didn't know that stuff because I was never taught certain things in church. I had a very progressive church, so we didn't teach like the hellfire like every day like some of these churches do. It was more of the love and, you know, God loves you and whatnot. So when he was bringing up points like there was, you know, like 25 different other mythologies that resembled the Jesus mythology, and when he asked a guy, this is kind of rude, he asked the guy, he's like, well, if heaven is so great, then why don't you kill yourself? You know, and I was like, whoa. Like, that's a good point. You know, like, for me, it was like, it kind of like smacked me in the face a little bit. So I kind of needed that more harsh approach, I think. And then there was a couple things I wanted to question him on. I was like, yeah, right, he's total, you know, BSing people. Yeah, right. So, you know, I had to do my own research and come to find out he was right. And I'm like, oh, wow. So that kind of started the whole process for me. Now, it took a while to actually come out, but that was like the start of it for me.
Was that were you offended first by that approach, or was it? Did you not find it offensive at first?
I mean, yeah, I was offended, but I was the kind of person that when I get offended, I get upset, and then I have to prove you wrong. So for me, it was more of I need to prove this guy wrong, and I couldn't, and then that's kind of where it snowballed. So the offense kind of brought like this fire out in me to say you're wrong, but then whenever I couldn't say that, I was like, oh, then I kind of like sat down for a minute. I was like, wait a minute. So.
And I think I've often wondered if those sorts of approaches are different when you're speaking to people out there as opposed to talking to a person. If you took that approach with a person that you were having a conversation with, it might not be received the same way. And I don't know, what do you guys, do you think that that's true, Courtney? Do you think it's because he's kind of talking to the generic yous as opposed to you sitting right in front of me?
Oh yeah, no, I'm kind of like I guess I'm kind of like an enigma in that, because I like to be offended because it makes me think. Not everybody likes to be offended. Everybody's like, sometimes when people are offended, they completely shut down. But for me, it wakes me up, and I'm like, rah, like the claws come out. So yeah, so I mean, there is different approaches, I think, but I think that those different approaches are definitely necessary, especially when dealing with religion, because sometimes you have to offend people to get them to wake up. And if that doesn't work, then you try another approach. But I think that there's multiple approaches.
I think pointing out the absurdity in something is that's why satire works. That's why that sort of approach has an effect, because it's pointing out the extreme absurdity, which in your case made you feel like you needed to defend it, which obviously was really effective. So did that then make you kind of let me think. So do you think that shaped your approach, or did that just pull you out of where you were? Like, do you feel like in a way you're kind of like a Bill Maher, kind of a poking, prodding, pointing out the absurd in your approach to addressing religion, or was it more just effective in kind of pulling you away from it?
I mean, at first it made me the opposite. Because whenever I came out of religion, I was agnostic for a while. Like, I was just like one of those fence sitters. Like, well, there could be a grand designer. We don't know. So I was very light with my approach with people. But once I actually came out as an atheist, and once I actually started getting involved in activism, yeah, I'm more like him than not. So now I do try to watch my approach now with certain people, but yeah, I'm pretty in your face about it because I'm an anti-theist, so that kind of comes out more than just being an atheist.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thanks, Courtney. Casper, go ahead.
All right. Hopefully my internet connection won't act up on us today. So I'm sorry. I grew up in a sort of fundamentalist Christian family, and so my background sort of consisted on the idea that you weren't even allowed to question religion at all. You weren't allowed to question the Bible. You weren't allowed to question what the minister said. And my grandfather was a minister up until he was unable to continue doing it. So that's always been a very, very big thing for me, because even when I did have questions and I did look at things and say, okay, this doesn't sound right, I still was being told, you can't ask that. You can't go there. So what really just brought me out of it was my love of music, and I've always found music to be something that I can just fall back into, and it helps me through things. And I heard a song by the band A Perfect Circle called Judith. The lead singer is a man named Maynard, and he's just an amazing man. And when I heard this song, and I heard the chorus of it, and I heard this man say, "Fuck your God, fuck your Lord, and fuck your Christ," I was like, oh my God, you can say that? Like, that's okay? And like, it's sort of like Michael said, the world didn't end. And it's one of those, I don't have to respect this. You know, it just sort of clicked in my. I don't have to respect any of this. If I think it's stupid, I can say yes. Fuck your God. The God that you believe in is evil. That is evil shit from the Bible, man. And like, I should be a little bit angry about that, you know. And so yeah, Maynard really, and he's not necessarily an atheist. He's a very spiritual person, but at the same time, he's just like, look, religion is crap, and he has no problem with saying that. And it's to be able to hear things like that, like on mainstream radio, because that song plays on radio. It's edited, of course, when it plays on the radio, but you know, it's out there, and it's like, this is in everyday life, and people are saying this out in the world in everyday life. And I was like, you know what? I don't have to be quiet. I don't have to sit here and just go, oh, well, you know, you have a right to believe whatever. No, you can believe whatever you want, but that doesn't mean I don't get a chance to say, hey, that's idiotic. So that just hearing all these vocal people that are like, look, religion has this horrible influence over people and causes so much division and hatred, that it just sort of said, you know, I can speak about that too. Like, I've had experience in my life, and then like I am big into looking at the world and what's going on in the world. So it's like, when you see those things, I get the feeling that we have to speak. You know, we have an obligation as human beings, because from my point of view and perspective, I think that humanity itself is a bigger organism than the individual. So we have sort of a duty and an obligation to speak when we see something that's not right. And just having really, you know, well-known vocal people that just step up and talk about it is just, it was an eye-opener to say that even though I question these things and I think I'd like to be polite, I don't have to be. I don't have to be polite, and I don't have to be nice about it, and I can say exactly what I think, and yes, that's going to offend people, and I don't have to care if you're offended. I don't. It doesn't have to affect me at all. I can be completely honest about how I feel. And it's just that sort of honesty that really I love seeing, especially from a lot of newer atheists out there and a lot of the new kids that are coming onto the block. It's a great thing to see that level of honesty just being put out there by them.
So people in the sidebar are asking if that's the Maynard from Tool.
Yes, it is. Same Maynard. Very, very awesome guy. I've actually got to meet him twice, and he is just a very interesting person. So if you ever get a chance to see Tool or A Perfect Circle, definitely worth seeing. It's a great show and some really great ideas put out by that music.
Is there any other music that, because I know from what I've come to tell about you just over the past year or so, it's you're very aware of the lyrics of songs, which people aren't always the poetry of and the lyricism in music. Is there any other music that has influenced you, or that you maybe appreciate for the way it makes you think, or the way it makes you perceive your ideas?
Oh yeah. Lamb of God, especially. Very big Lamb of God fan, and a lot of the ideas that they put forward and touch on are just, it's not something you're going to hear in the mainstream generally, but it's stuff that needs to be said, and they do it bluntly and just throw it right out there, and they don't make any excuses for it, you know. All That Remains is another really good atheist metal band. But yeah, there's just so many musicians out there, and it seems to be like, especially in the metal arena, in that genre, there's just a lot of very vocal atheists and anti-theists out there.
Very cool. Do you make music?
Yes, I write and sing and play a few instruments, about 7. So yeah, music is very important to me because growing up I had a lot of social issues that I had a lot of trouble working through. I was adopted and didn't really feel like I fit in with the people who were raising me. So it was always, music was a place I could turn and just dive into and just kind of let it flow over me and let me forget about everything else going on.
I'm really glad that you shared that, Casper, and that you were here, because I do think that it's I'm trying to see how I can weave this in. So a lot of people who are very sincerely religious and don't deeply question their ideas, it seems to me are often people who are not necessarily inclined toward high academia, and often creative people, the feelers of the world, and spirituality and religion speaks to them in a way that books and debates and public speaking engagements just doesn't. They feel God, they experience God, they have personal moments with their religion or their spirituality or whatever. And I think that there is an area within this conversation that I think is a little bit lacking, which is music and the arts in a broader sense. And a lot of people really need that approach, not just, okay, let me tell you where all your fallacies are in this, because they feel God. They're not, your fallacy arguments aren't gonna weigh on them at all. So I think that's really important. And I'm wondering, do you think that you're also a pretty deep thinker, so I'm guessing this might not necessarily be the case, but do you think that approach was necessary? It was a necessary component for you, being music, not just an argument?
Well, the thing that finally made me come out as an atheist, and I've questioned since I was very young, but I've always said I'm a Christian, I follow this because it was basically my inherited religion, you know, that I was born into, and that's what my parents and everybody had, and blah, blah, blah. Same stuff most people go through, but the thing that really made me came out is to finally just say, I've never felt God. I've never had that emotional connection. It's never been there. And I think that's one of the things that does affect a lot of people, and that's why I wrote my latest book called The Passion of the Atheist, which deals with the emotional side of atheism, because there is an emotional component. And when you go through your life and you know 20-something years and you've never felt God and you've never felt an answer to any of your prayers and your pleading, it's just like, you know, fuck this. I don't believe in this crap. I've got to do for myself. I've got to step up to the plate and take care of business. So that was one of those things. Yeah, just never feeling God is one of those things that really affects a lot of people, I believe.
Yeah, I think so too. I grew up in what would be considered charismatic Pentecostal evangelical Christianity, which is very much about feeling God and feeling God's presence and all of that. And I think when I was finally able to admit that I didn't experience it the same way, that was definitely a huge point where I was like, I need to reevaluate all this. And then it took several more years, but that was a huge, being able to admit that wasn't my experience was a huge turning point for me as well. Does anybody have any other story about a person or approach that influenced them or affected them? Erasmo, how about you? Nope. Armin, go for it.
I'm actually a little bit different because when I became an atheist, I was the only atheist I knew of other than Stalin, because that's what they told us in school about atheists. But I came to atheism as a teenager without knowing anybody else other than me that was atheist, and that was really lonely. So, and this was in Iran, so I'm very happy that is different now, that when people start doubting these things. There's so many resources, YouTube channels, Facebook pages, communities. Because when I became an atheist, many times I felt that maybe there's just something wrong with me. Maybe I'm just not seeing what everybody else is seeing. Maybe I'm just crazy or something. And it's hard to share those views with other people when you think that now I realize that even in Iran there were a lot of other atheists, but for me at that point, it was, at the beginning at least, it wasn't that obvious because there weren't the resources for me to find these other people or all these resources, or to know that there's actually a lot of great philosophers and scientists in the world, even at that time, that don't believe in God. So for a lot of people that do see these resources and do sometimes I even see atheists that wonder why would somebody spend so much time talking about these things. They say that the good thing about atheism is that you don't have to spend so much time thinking about God and religion. So why are these people wasting their time talking about things that they don't believe even exist? But to me, I could see the point of doing that. When I think about when I was an atheist and when I felt so isolated and so different, I could see the benefit of all these resources existing and all the people that not just build resources for you to gain knowledge, but also just people that just spend time building communities, even without. Even if they're not spending time providing content for you, just building an environment where atheists can get together. There's so much value in that, for especially in places where in the real world, outside of social media or the internet, it's hard for people to find other like-minded people. So because I didn't have. Later on, there's a lot of great atheist thinkers that shaped the way I framed things or how I discuss these ideas. But for somebody that, at the beginning didn't have that many people influence him, I just want to say that I just want to bring some attention to how important these resources and this kind of services are.
Would you say, Armin, that you ended up creating your own way? Did you end up having to put yourself out there and then finding that there were other people like you in order to actually have that community?
Yeah, what I did was, at first I went online on this social media website called Orkut, and I created a group called Iranian Atheists, and I didn't think that anything would happen with it, but within weeks, hundreds of other Iranian atheists started joining it. So for me, that was that was a shock, not just for me, but for many other people that joined it. Right now, there's so many Iranian atheist communities out there, but at that time, almost every single person that joined it was shocked about how many other people were in there. So not only were we happy that we are finding each other, for me, it showed the fact that we were finding it so helpful to see each other. To me, it showed how important it was to create communities like this online.
And I think that's a huge point that is good to make, is that some people have said that there are already a lot of big voices in this conversation. There are already a lot of big names. There's already a lot of people talking. And yeah, there are, but there's always room for another person to say something else, or to say it in a different way, or to say it to a different group of people, and not everybody seeks out all of these resources. Not everybody even knows that that's what they want or that's what they need in their life at that moment. So for other people to be able to reach out and to say things their own way is really important, which is what a huge component of Atheist Republic is a platform to allow other people to share their thoughts and opinions about things with their own voice, and that's really important to us. And obviously, Armin started Atheist Republic, and that his experience really flowed into what Atheist Republic became, which is a way for people to connect, but by providing that platform and that opportunity. So there is always room for everybody to share their stories and their experiences. And which actually reminds me, I'll do a little bit, just a brief Atheist Republic promotion here. We do have an anthology of stories that we're trying to put together of people's experiences, how atheism exists in their life, how they express their atheism in their space and where they live. And we want your stories, so I'm not exactly sure where we have that promoted. I mean, do you have a direct place for people to go?
I'll add a link to it in the description of the video.
Okay, so if you need to come back to this, if you're watching this live and you're interested in sharing your story, actually you can just email your story to anybody in Atheist Republic through the website. Email it through the website, and it'll get to the right people. It's basically going to be a book that's a collection of people's stories, and I personally am a huge advocate of people being able to tell their stories, and I think stories are really important, and hearing people's experiences is really important. So please share with us your story. Our original deadline has been extended because we didn't get much of a response. I think that was due to a few different things, but I think people do want to tell their stories, and we want to give you a chance to do that. So now is a good time to give a little push for that. Erasmo, go ahead.
Okay, I just activated my microphone. Well, rather than a person in particular that pushed me towards the path of atheism, rather it was a series of videos that I encountered on YouTube when I was of age, 18 years old. 6 years ago, wow, a long time ago. The title of the video was "Why God Won't Heal Amputees," and I'm sure a lot of people have already watched that video. A good video, but that video was the detonant, the starting point of my change of view, of the change of thought, because, well, I wasn't a closet atheist ever since I was a kid, but I didn't know, I didn't have the knowledge, so I didn't realize until several years after, because I had thoughts of, why does religion need so much merchandise about a holy book, and why do people regard so much importance about a holy book if it only costs a couple bucks in the nearby store? Or why do people act so imprudent, so negative, so wrong? Why they hurt each other if there is supposedly an omnipotent God, an all-loving God that is supposed to have everything in order? And everything, and I started to make all these connections ever since I watched the videos. So if you could say it, I think you do help me a lot with developing my atheism. Ever since I watched those videos, I discovered people like Matt Dillahunty, Richard Dawkins, and discovered some hidden atheist, hidden messages throughout some some authors, such as I don't know, Alan Alexander Milne, who was the author and the creator of Winnie the Pooh. Yes, that man wasn't a closet atheist, and one of my favorite authors. Well, yeah, a strange relation, mixing Winnie the Pooh and atheism and all together. Yeah, and I even managed to make connections, to discover connections between atheism and popular stories, even video games, in which the main purpose is to kill the god and to create new gods, create new rules, create new worlds, to change everything, as if it were a hidden message towards the audience, to say, hey, change, don't go there, be a good person, be a good guy. And ever since that starting point, I have been constructing and improving my reasoning, and I have become, I think, a better person each passing day. I haven't had a hardship or or any difficulties regarding my change of view, but I have had differences with people that I respect and I love, such as my family, and I had to abandon some friends because, well, we were different, and I started to realize how different they were from me, how just, and I just realized that they did things that you shouldn't do, even regardless of being atheist or not. And I don't know if I missed something out there. I think that's what I have to share today.
So, Erasmo, it sounds like that you, from what I can tell, you were challenged or intrigued by questioning. That it seems like the people that really influenced you or that you were interested in were asking difficult questions. And do you find that tends to be a theme for you, that you ask the difficult questions even if it's just inside yourself, and that maybe you just need somebody else to ask the question to make you realize that, oh yeah, that's a question I have too? Is that kind of do you feel like that's kind of a way you approach these things?
Well, yeah, actually, let me tell you a short story. When I started college, it's 5 years ago now, and one of my classmates was a Roman Catholic fan. He was Roman Catholic through and through, from head to toe, and every day he will be praying it before he started to eat, and you know, all this customs and habits that a Roman Catholic has. Yes, I was Roman Catholic. I know that, and I was euphoric because I was a fresh atheist at the time, and whenever I introduced myself, I said, "Hey, I'm an atheist," and he approached to me and started to ask me, well, yeah, it's good and all, but why are you an atheist? It started as an innocent question, and I thought I explained myself thoroughly, saying, hey, well, you know, there is this proof, there is this concept called evolution that has been proved over and over throughout the years. And the guy replied back by saying, but even so, God has helped people, and so and so. And he started to push me back a lot, to the point that I just insulted him back, even though he hasn't insulted me at all. And I say, fuck you, you're an imbecile, an asshole, and true-thread Christian shit. And, and he only replied by saying, well, you are an asshole too. And he left. Yes, but whenever I go back, but in that point of time, I tell to myself, why did I did that? I could behave a lot better than that. But even even so, it was a very funny day. So yes, then what you told me, some questions there that go to me, I don't realize them. I don't think them. I don't formulate them until I hear them first. And now I have evolved so much ever from that date, and from that day on, to the point that I can start a debate without recurring to insults, and go on and be elaborate and talk about atheism for hours.
I think it's probably a good point of empathy to actually, Erasmo, can you mute your mic? I'm hearing myself back. It's hard for me to focus.
Yeah, sorry. Let me.
That's okay. sometimes I can ignore my own voice coming back to me, but not usually. I think now I've lost my train of thought. Never mind. It probably wasn't important. Okay, so let's hear from Todd.
A lot of what you guys have been talking about, I can echo a lot. A lot of what Casper said really resonated with me, as far as music being very important, and being involved in music growing up, and still making it, and sort of doing that as part of a creative outlet. And my experience, as far as was similar to Erasmus, in that the questions that I had came in from internally from inside me. It was an emotional journey. I just turned in a manuscript for my first AR book on it, that sort of details it, and goes into more detail about it. But it was, even in writing it, I was able to relive a lot of the emotion that went along with that, with asking those questions and seeing this belief system that I had treasured, that I had defended for so long, just crumble under the weight of there was no evidence to support it, and it just simply crumbled under the weight whenever I started digging for it. And it's a traumatic. It was very traumatic for me. It was frightening. It was heartbreaking. There was a lot of anger too, and so as I started to learn more about what atheism even was, and then to embrace it, I began to read and to hear different people talking. Of course, the big four. I listened to what Hitchens had to say about it. Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, and I liked the fact that their approaches to it were different. The way that they expressed it was they varied from each other. So I guess and I've continued to the resources that I enjoy are the ones that push me further. I'm kind of like Courtney in that I love being challenged, and I love hitting those walls, because it makes me dig in, and it makes me figure things out, and it pushes me to go further, and I like those experiences. And so the resources I like are the ones that that encourage me to continue to refine my own identity, as far as what I believe and why, and how to as well as different ways to express it and engage with other people. I've gotten to the point where I kind of go as the discussion dictates. If somebody wants to debate and they want to be, if they want to be kind of belligerent and vigorous, then we'll fine. I'll step in and show you how to swing. I can be just as belligerent as anybody. But if you want to have a gentle discussion where it's respectful, rational discourse, that's kind of then we can do that too. But either way, I'm just going to tell you what I think and why, and we can sort of let it all hash out from there, and see where the experiences lead. Some of the resources that I really enjoy are there's this guy, the Messianic Manic, is on YouTube, a lot of YouTube stuff. He does a lot of really good stuff that's very short, between 2.5 and 4 minutes, but it's really solid. For more researched things, you got the Bible skeptic Brett Palmer, I think his name is. He does really excellent research, and it's very well cited, well sourced, and he's very, very thorough. And somebody else one of the first YouTube atheists that I really started listening to, that sort of really inspired me to be more vocal about it, and to make me more comfortable with it, and to inspire me to be more vocal about it, was Jacqueline Glenn. And I know Michael had mentioned her in the sidebar, and I'll let him kind of talk more about that if the discussion goes that direction. But that's where I've been, is just sort of to going from there, and it's been an interesting journey. And coming from it as I did, there's a lot. I still live in my hometown, which is in the South. So there's not a whole lot of interaction with atheists around here, and I'm kind of a loner anyway. So Atheist Republic is really the first community that I've really been a part of, and I looked at it for quite a while before I ever became a part of it. I liked what I saw, and I like what we have. It's been a great source of encouragement to me, a great source of challenge, and a great source of support, which is something that was sorely lacking and still is to a large degree in my regular experience. And to be able to get that from this community is invaluable to me, and I'm very appreciative of it.
That's awesome. I think, and I remembered my thought that I had, that the questions and the asking the questions and the prodding is I think something that people aren't always used to, and I think one of the things that we can have patience for or an understanding for along the lines of what Erasmo experienced is that when those questions are brought up and it makes us feel defensive and frustrated, that theists feel that as well, and that's where a lot of that emotion is coming from. That's where a lot of that sort of irrational thought process comes from, because a lot of times when you feel backed into a corner, you get into lizard brain, and lizard brain doesn't understand fallacies. Lizards aren't very good at thoughtful debate, and that's I think a lot of what happens. And I think we in those moments I've found really helpful is to actually say, I understand what you're feeling right now. That is really frustrating when somebody pokes so hard at an idea that you hold strongly and you can't defend, and I get that. I get that feeling. So let's rewind and we'll try again, or let's back it up a little bit and go with something a little bit easier. And that's, just in personal one-on-one conversation, which is where I tend to live, and I appreciate people who can have good conversations with an understanding of where the other person is coming from. That tends to appeal to me a little bit more. And so I also wanted to remind everybody that we are going to have a big list of resources we have on atheistrepublic.com. If you click on the top, there is a link that says resources. We have a bunch. We might end up, our web people might end up reorganizing that a little bit. We are going to add a section also for articles that just are general, just hyperlinks of different topics that people can click on. And I don't know if we have YouTubers on there, but we might have to add a section for that as well. So I felt like it will be more interesting to listen to us talk about this kind of stuff than to rattle off a bunch of names and links for things. But those will be available. Anything that's talked about here we'll put below, and anything else you can find on our website at atheistrepublic.com under the resources section. Michael had a thought to share, and then I'm going to give just a little bit of time to promote some of the resources that are coming out from the people here today. So go ahead, Michael.
Right, let's just double check. I'm pretty certain that if I click on another window, can you still hear me now? I've clicked on another window.
Yeah, you're good.
Right, okay. I was having a conversation with a guy last night in our new group where we tried to get people who are religious to talk to us about atheism, and it's actually a guy that he's very, very recently decided to admit to himself that he doesn't believe in God anymore. And he was talking to me about he lives in I think it's Pakistan he lives in, and he was talking about the tension that it causes in his family and so on. And he said, I'll read his exact words out. He says here, I'm pretending pretty good. I was very rebellious during my early days as an atheist. I told my parents that I won't fast and it's stupid. The reaction was extreme. My father told me that if I wanted to live in his house, I have to follow his rules. Since then, I haven't voiced my views about anything. And he went on to talk about how he feels very alone and isolated. And we talked a little bit more, and I mentioned that, yeah, it was probably being quite pragmatic to just not to drop the subject while he lives in his parents' house, and that perhaps he could reach out to the main group where he can talk to as many atheists as he wants. And then a little bit further down, and he said, like, yeah, I understand. That's why I haven't told a single person in real life that I'm an atheist. I have a fear that may sound irrational, sounded perfectly rational to me, but that if I tell somebody about my atheism, they will spread it out. I don't want a label on me. I don't want to be seen. I want to be seen for who I am as a person, not as an atheist. Because we've been exploring the idea that he would just then become John the atheist. That would immediately become the most interesting thing about him to every single person in his community, and they'd never leave him alone about it. And he just feels this massive sense of frustration at being alone. His community are all. He was wondering whether to mention it to a friend. I advised him that perhaps he needs to really think about that, because once that particular genie's out of the bottle, it'll never go back in. And how much did he think his friends would sympathise with him? And the conversation just went on like this. That his friends are all very Islamic, telling him to pray. So at that point, this was clearly on his mind, and he was really tortured by it, amongst other things. And he just has nobody to talk to at all in his everyday life. There's not one person in his peer group or in his family that he can actually express how he feels to about this issue. And the only people he can talk to are online. And I think if we weren't there, I don't know what he'd do. And there must be so many people. And we even looked at the fact that, like Armin said, that he could have a friend who feels the same way as he does, and they're both terrified of saying anything, and they could go their entire life, each one of them thinking that the other person is a believer, just because they're both playing that "I need to pretend or I will die" game. And he's not just being melodramatic about that. We've covered this before in other Hangouts, and I think that we provide this route for people who are young atheists who feel so dreadfully alone because the family isn't a place that they can turn to. The family isn't a haven of understanding and tolerance to them, and the friends are terrifying because the instant that they know this about him, they may turn on him. And we are this place that they can turn to. People like us, organizations like ours. And then you've got the more passive way of looking at YouTube things that we talked about, and websites that just basically share ideas that you can read and access. That information is now available, and I think the internet is a really powerful resource for young people. And I think we have to recognise the incurred responsibility of that. That we sometimes are the only people that person has discovered that he can talk to. And it was a really powerful moment for me last night talking to this guy. Anyway, that's basically where we're at.
Yeah, wow. That's only one example of so many that we get every day, that of people who feel alone and have. And again, there's so many times also I'll hear people say, how can you feel alone? This is the internet age. You know, obviously everybody knows there's atheists out there. But there's so many different components to feeling a connection and feeling a resonance with other human beings. And sometimes it's just, well, I don't want people to just know me as the neighborhood atheist, you know, like I don't want to have that reputation or whatever. So there's so much to it, and I'm really thankful that we have all of these different avenues. We are getting some feedback, I think, about people who have influenced all of you, and we would love to hear more of that. So please email us. Let us add your suggestions. It doesn't have to be a celebrity or a personality of any sort. It doesn't have to necessarily be academic. Maybe it's art. Maybe it's a video game that inspired you to think differently about the world and allowed you to question your beliefs. We are always looking for more resources, and we would love to top up our resource pool with people who other people don't know, and networks and connection points that other people might not have heard of. So send those our way through our website. Just contact us. There is a great way, or you can share them through Facebook or any of the other formats that we have. So Armin is asking me to mention some of the Twitter comments. Okay, let me see. Nathan Phelps has inspired this person from Bangladesh I'm not sure what the rest of that means. So Nathan Phelps apparently is someone that has influenced somebody. That was from...
He's a former Westbrook Baptist church guy that
okay.
left the church and...
yes, right. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the grandsons or something like that, I think. So that was from @iEuclid, and that person was from Bangladesh. Thanks for that. And this person, I always admire ancient Greek philosophers, and am heavily influenced by Epicurus and Socrates. So thank you for that. Those are great resources for helping us think maybe a little bit differently, or think smartly about what we believe, even after or when we are atheists. Atheists are not immune from also blindly following particular trains of thought or beliefs, and so we need to be thinking critically about that as well. So, Armin, why don't you tell where do people tweet us at? Tweet us at Atheist Republic.
Yeah, usually if they want to talk to us directly, they tweet us at Atheist Republic, but usually during the Hangout, when they want to be involved in the discussion, they just use the hashtag Atheist Republic. That hashtag is used when they want to really get our attention, because the @Atheist Republic, we get so many people tweeting at us that it's hard for us to to screen through those. So that's why the hashtag is usually a better way to get our attention.
Okay, so hashtag Atheist Republic. We will see you, and especially during the Hangout in particular, we'll try to monitor that, and then we can mention your thoughts or questions that you might have. We'll try to get better at streamlining that process a little bit as well. We'd like to make it a little bit more interactive, so spread the word, get more people involved. And so now I just want to quickly, we're a little bit over time, but I want to spend just a minute talking briefly about what we all have to offer in terms of resources. Casper, why don't you rattle off all of your contributions, which are huge. Go for it.
Well, I've actually written 6 books in the last year. My 6th book will be out next week, and they're all on various topics. My first book, The Bible in a Nutshell, basically told the story of the Bible the way I've always heard it in my head. It's very blasphemous, and honestly, it's very rude and crude, and actually very popular for some reason. So, past that, I've tried to go a little bit more in depth with some of my studies, and then try to offer some different points of view, like my next book coming out, The Passion of the Atheist, dealing with the more emotional components of atheism, and how our emotions can drive us in our atheism, and cause us to think differently about the things we've always responded to. Yeah, Michael said somebody needs to hide my pen. It's actually probably true. I've got 10 other projects in the works right now. So next year is going to be another big year for me. But aside from the work I've done, as far as my writing, I'd much rather talk about the other authors that we've had wanting to publish through Atheist Republic, because that's a much more big deal. We've had just an influx of people. We've got about 8 other titles by various authors out there that have come into us wanting to be published through Atheist Republic, and so I think our project to get a sort of a small publishing division to help promote and get self-published authors out there and help promote them has just been a huge thing, and people are really responding to it well. And I think we offer a great resource. If you want your voice to be heard, contact us and let us know what your ideas are and what you've got on your plate, and we can probably help with it. We can probably get you going out there and just spread your word out there. We're probably not going to make you rich. I certainly am not rich doing this, but people will hear you, and that's more important. People will hear your message, and they'll know what you have to say, and they'll hear your story. And like you mentioned about the anthology, we want to know what's going on in your life. We want to tell people about you and what you've been through and your experiences. And that's a great thing, because like I said earlier, you know, even though there are plenty of really vocal atheists out there and prominent atheists, the religious people still dominate the discussion. And you know, there's more atheist voices to be heard. So I want to help, you know, level that playing field. Let's make sure that religion isn't dominating the conversation the whole time. So that's what I got.
Awesome. Sometimes my microphone, where I can unmute, like goes away for a second, and I've got to hover over it. It's a very frantic moment. So yeah, we have a lot coming out through Atheist Republic. Armin has a book called Why There Is No God: Simple Responses to 20 Common Arguments for the Existence of God. We have more and more coming. Courtney, I wanted to give you a chance to share with us what you're up to.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you guys have made it public yet, but I know that the first children's book through Atheist Republic, I'm a Free Thinker, is now out there. So if anybody wants to pick it up, I'm not sure if it's available on Kindle yet, but I know that it should be, like soon, or however. It should be available shortly, but it is available on paperback now. And I do have other children's books out there for, you know, specifically atheist or free-thinking children. Sketty Tales is an actual adventure story that teaches kids about, you know, a plethora of things, but mainly it focuses on the science. The first one talks about the Big Bang, and I wanted to make it fun and adventurous so that way kids have a basic foundation for science and it makes them kind of want to learn more. So I leave just enough out of the books to where they ask questions, so the conversation continues afterwards. So I want to promote kind of that, the inquisitive nature, but I also want to kind of promote family togetherness too, because that gets the parents and the kids to kind of interact with each other. So, you know, and I'm working on one for evolution right now, so hopefully that'll come out sometime this year.
All of us have kids in our lives in one way or another, even if you're not a parent. So check those out. We'll have the links available. Hopefully, we'll send you to one place, and we can give all that information to you in the most concise way possible. A lot of these books are short. All of them are available in ebook format, and they are inexpensive. They're a great way to brush up on your critical thinking, to get a good laugh, to read a story to your kids. We've got everything pretty much that you could imagine available through Atheist Republic Publishing. We have more and more people coming who are interested in publishing and having us help promote them. It's a really great way to get your works out there in an easy way. Like was mentioned, it probably won't make you rich. Publishing doesn't really do that anymore. So unfortunately, if you're a writer and you want to get rich, you're going to have to find another avenue for that. But it is a great way to get your ideas out there, and we will do the best we can to promote you to the widest audience possible. And again, if you have other resources that you would like to share with us, please let us know. Get in touch with us through our website. And if you like Atheist Republic, if it's important to you, please consider supporting us either through volunteering. We have a volunteer option on our website. You can sign up. Or if you have a few pennies to toss our way, please consider that as well. It's not free for us. We are a nonprofit, but it is not free for us to run Atheist Republic. It does cost money and it costs time. So if you have time or money or both, share some with us. We would appreciate it greatly. So thanks again. All the links and information are going to be below. Make sure you subscribe and come back next week. We'll be here as per usual. And we would love to get some involvement in Twitter and as we're talking, so that we can actually maybe answer some questions. I'm not sure what we're talking about next week, but it'll be interesting either way. It always is. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Come back next week. See ya.